Welcome back to Clear the Cache, first episode of 2021. It's a brand new year. Jesse. Find Jesse on Twitter at planet_fatness. You can find me on Twitter at an outraged Jew. Jesse, listen, I made the cardinal mistake of staying up till midnight, though it's completely trivial and worthless and unnecessary, and you regret it the next day, only because I have a young kid who has not stayed up till midnight to experience the New Year's or lack thereof. Did you stay up to midnight, or did you just go to bed at a regular time?
New Year's is a big deal. My parents came over from Ukraine like 30 years ago. So over in Eastern Europe, New Year's is a bigger deal than Christmas is. New Year's is a pretty big deal for us. I probably stayed up. I didn't even obviously go anywhere because of COVID and everything, but I probably stayed up until 2 or so.
Well, in your defense, you are up late no matter what, right?
Yes, and I'm childless at the moment, so that is
the wind is at your sails. The world is your oyster. You can do whatever you want right now. This is your opportunity to live your best life, Jesse. And all we did last night, I had no alcohol, which thank God, because the only thing that makes it worse is feeling like trash the next morning. But the equivalent of the substitute of alcohol is too much candy, too many sweets, too much chocolate, too much of that crap. And my wife had so many cookies made, and I just kept eating cookies and eating cookies. I'm like, I'll work it off in 2021. I'll do that. I'll take care of it in 2021. And just felt like absolute trash going to bed because of the sweets. Are you guys not much of like a sweets group on New Year's, or is there a lot of food?
It's like a lot of alcohol. It's mostly alcohol. Yeah, it's not even the sweets.
Wow.
Alcohol's a big deal. Like I'll try to do whatever I can to kind of have the week off of New Year's, just so I don't have to worry about showing up hungover to work the next day. So I'll take what I can get.
Wow. Okay. Well, I imagine. I mean, many of New Year's I've had hungover, feeling ill, kneeling before the toilet many evenings as well.
It's not a fun day.
No. You tell yourself, you're like, I'm never gonna do this again. This is it. This is the last time. And then like 364 days later, you're like, I'll never do this again. This is the and so
15 years in a row.
15 years in a row. You just don't learn. So not this year.
Yeah.
Though I do have to work off 27 pounds of cookies. So I like to be behind to start the year. So
nice.
We saw the NBA open up here in the past couple weeks. We started a fantasy NBA league, which is, I think it's a 16-team league. By the end of the draft, we're picking names of players that I was grabbing guys that are getting 4 minutes in regulation of playing time. So they're no help to my fantasy roster.
It's absurd. That's on me, honestly. I wanted to get as many people, as many listeners and people on the Discord and your Patreon as possible. But when you have Daniel Tice as the top free agent pickup, you're not looking so good. So the 16-team format is on me. I take
it's beefy. So with that being said, though, the NBA is back and in a big way, and a lot of these young stars are living up to the hype. And one in particular was a guy that we've talked about on other episodes. That's Ja Morant. And he was a rookie last year. There was a lot of expectation for him this year. Popular cultural player. And he comes out in his first game of the year, scores 44 points, and his card prices went through the roof. You saw this happen?
I did, yeah. His Prism prices in the off season and going into the season were in the $300 to $400 range, $450 range. Maybe they got up to 500 right before tip off, and they've been selling recently during his hot stretch up until like up through 1,000 to 1,100, $1,100. So for his Prism based PSA 10. And given the population count on that card, and it's with the PSA backlog and with how many cards they have that are waiting to be graded, it's only going to get higher. But the price increase on his cards has been absolutely insane. Like, you could have bought a week before the season and you could have 3x right there.
I can't even explain it myself, but as we've talked about, there's sort of tiers to the value of these young superstars. And kind of as we talked about off show, sort of in the last 2 to 3 to 4 years, sort of the modern day ceiling would be Luka Doncic. Like, he's going to kind of set the price of some of these cards beneath him. As you mentioned, you believe that, like, if we go a little further back, Giannis is that next tier. And the difference between Giannis's prices and Luka's prices is at least 2 times. Is that right? And Luka's going at about 1,700.
Yeah, Luka, he started approaching like the $2,000 range within like the first week of the season. Maybe not quite, maybe like 1,900. He's dropped off a little bit recently just because of a couple of down games. So I've been seeing his cards regularly listed in the $1,600 range. But Giannis is somebody who's, we have to take into account. And so Giannis was rookie in 2013, and that was only the second year of Prism products, and that was the second year that I believe Panini had the exclusive license on NBA trading cards. So the population counts weren't nearly as high as the population of cards from 2017, 18, and 19. So Giannis's cards, like from a population count perspective, they're going to be held at a higher premium than somebody like Luka, even though Luka's, he's being more hyped, and there's more hype following him potentially than Giannis. But Giannis's Prism based PSA 10s are regularly going for like 4,500 or so. Meanwhile, Luka's kind of sitting around 17. So it's a huge difference between the two. But if Luka had, I don't know, maybe 10,000 Prism PSA 10s, he'd probably be closer to that range, honestly. But the population count is really what's hurting Luka.
I mean, if you look back, and I believe this was on December 23rd, like if you look back, the Joss Silver Prism PSA 10, I think prior to that blow-up game, and I've got to go back to check this specifically, but I think in the offseason, that might have been like a $600 card. If his other ones were at like $350 or $400, it might have been $650 or something like that. And
yeah, it's still under $1,000.
Yeah, still under $1,000. And on December 23rd, on the day of Ja, our Lord and Savior, when he dropped 44 in the first game of his NBA season, and everybody lost their flippin' minds, a Panini Prism Silver Ja Morant rookie PSA 10 sold in auction with 41 bids that night for how much, Jesse? What's your guess? The silver, what did it peak at?
I'm going to say 2,200.
You're going to shit your pants. It's twice that number.
No, what, $4 grand?
$4,100.
Wow.
4,100. I'm seeing them for 4,500. So
you're almost 10xing right
yes.
there. Oh my God, that's wild.
That's wild. And again, and we talked about this off show, that it is expensive for some people to get into some of these cards. Admittedly, NBA at the floor is more expensive. The floor of a rookie that hasn't done anything in the NBA is like I mean, they're going for more than a Saquon Barkley rookie card right now, PSA 10. You could get a Prism PSA 10 Saquon Barkley rookie card for less than you can get a rookie that we haven't even seen do anything in the NBA right now. And that's just the price difference, but the investment is so good. It's almost as if you had somebody you trusted and you put your money together and you invested in one of these $400 cards, if you didn't want to put in all the money yourself, especially in NBA, it's almost a guarantee that if you pick one of these good players, that just the hype alone is going to drive that card up significantly. And we're seeing now post injury, these jaw cards that went from 350 to 400 before the season started and flared up to 1100 after that big game. They've since sort of regressed back to 650, 700. So I kind of use the phrase off air like rinse and repeat, but really you could have bought off season, sold at 1100, bought back in at 650. He's going to go back up again at some point, come back down. So there's just a lot of rise and fall. But with NBA cards in particular, we've talked about this on the show, Jesse, that these young superstars, there's so much hype. There's a lot of money that's invested in the NBA market, specifically amongst cards. But when we look at the ceiling of these players, and Ja Morant in this case, clearly that's his likely peak this year. Even if he starts to stabilize and he's a 28 point a game player, and people start to talk about him as a top 10 player in the league, that 1100 might become sort of his new ceiling, maybe. Not quite Luka, because we would have only seen it for a year, but maybe a little more hype than Tatum. He might be right in that range, right in that Booker range, and settle his new floor in. But when we look at NFL comparative ceilings to the NBA, do we see similar trends? I mean, are there parallels here?
So for the NFL, there is still definitely money to be made in NFL in buying, especially buying in the offseason. Oh my God, you can make a killing for some guys. The ceiling is definitely higher for NBA cards, but there's still money to be made as long as you buy at the right time. Like if you try to limit your NFL buying from not too long after the Super Bowl's over to maybe early July, you can make a lot of money. So Nate, you approached me with this question maybe a week or two ago. So you were wondering yourself what kind of profit margins you could be looking at with NFL in general, comparing that to NBA, because NBA obviously it's understood that NBA's ceiling is much higher with a lot of, especially the younger players, like Prism or Prism Silver cards. So I went ahead and I looked at, I think there were 6 players that I looked at, in July going up until now, and seeing what happened in some of their prices of their more popular rookie cards. Mainly if it was a player that came out, pre 2013, it would mostly be their Topps Chrome, a couple of their Prisms if it's in the early days of Prism, and then most recently Topps no longer has a license in the NFL, so they don't make. So most recently we'd be strictly looking at just the Prism cards for just to keep things simple. So the guys that I was looking at, that definitely got a fair amount of hype throughout the year in the offseason, are Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, Patrick Mahomes, and Tyreek Hill. So my goal here was to kind of, quarterbacks are still king in the football hobby. So I wanted to get 3 really hyped quarterbacks, to compare their prices and their ceilings and how much money could have been made. And, just for, just to kind of see their top skill position player, and see if their prices kind of fluctuated along with the quarterback's prices. So I went with each of those 3 hot quarterbacks, wide receiver ones. So if we're looking at somebody like a Russ Prism base PSA 10, from 2012, you could have had that for about $500 in early July. If you sold that card at the peak, I believe it peaked either very early in the season, like week 1, or right before the season started, that $500 card went up to $3,000. So you're looking at a 500% increase in terms of profit. So you're pocketing a little under $2,500 after fees. I mean, there's definitely a much lower floor, with aren't, I guess, as high as NBA, but the ceilings are definitely there, if you sell at the right time. So even something like Russ's Topps Chrome, same year, Topps Chrome 2012, base PSA 10. You could have had that card for $400 in early July. Sold it a couple months later for $1,775, making a 340% profit. And if we go to somebody like DK Metcalf is like a fully in like the data that I gathered. So his base Prism PSA 10 was selling for $85 in early July. It peaked at $450, which is a huge increase for a card that's under $100. It's over 400% profit margin. If you bought his Prism Silver rookie PSA 10 you could have bought that for $180 back in July. That card peaked not too long ago at $1,600 on eBay. So that's almost an 800% profit margin. And it most recently sold. It dipped a little bit, but not by too much. I think it recently sold for $1,500. And next we have Kyler. So Kyler's base Prism PSA 10. I had a couple of these myself because I thought $300 to $350 was a little too cheap for Kyler, and I knew he was going to be really hyped going into the season. So I bought a couple of his personally. They peaked at about $1,100 in September. So we're still looking at like 3xing basically. And his Prism Silver was going for much more, understandably. The pop count's much lower too. So that card was sold for $1,350 in July. It peaked over $4,500 early on in the season as well. So that's almost a 250% profit. Yeah, I'll talk later about potential buying opportunities that I inadvertently found with some of these cards. But if we look at Hopkins, Topps Chrome, base PSA 10, they were going for $125. You didn't, honestly, with these cards, unfortunately, somehow you didn't profit too much. They only peaked at $300. So you're honestly, after fees, you're looking at close to like $100 or $125 profit. His Prism, you only 2x'd, which is fine. So Hopkins didn't see quite the rise as maybe somebody like DK did. And the last two guys I looked at, like I said, were Mahomes and Tyreek. Mahomes is he's kind of another freak in this data set as well, because people are already comparing him to Tom Brady and the likes of like Peyton Manning and Drew Brees. So his prices are already inflated, probably for the long term. You could have had his Prism Silver PSA 10 rookie for a little under $3,300, that's a lot of money for. But it peaked for over 8,000. Maybe a month ago. And even now they're still going for around 7,500 regularly. So that's like a $4,000 to $5,000 profit just right there. And then the last player I looked at was Tyreek. His price spiked from $140 in July to $425 in September. So pretty quick turnaround, and a pretty quick jump too. Since the Chiefs have been doing so well, his prices have been going around like $350 recently. So there's still profit to be made. If you go with somebody like a skill position player, like I'm telling you, DK is just a freak. Like out of any player from a percentage standpoint that you could have profited on, out of these 6 guys, DK would have netted you the most profit from a percentage perspective, not from a dollar perspective. Obviously, that's Mahomes, but yeah, I mean, this kind of shows me that quarterback is still king. There's definitely a time to buy and sell in football. Definitely try to limit your football buying. I mean, I'm kind of guilty of this too, where I'll even buy cards now that I feel are underpriced. They'll probably dip a little bit more in the off season, but overall for maybe the next year or two, I still think they're solid investments. But there's definitely a time to sell in football. football fans are very reactionary. Football card collectors are very reactionary. Investors are very reactionary. So there's definitely a time to sell. The profit is still there, but some of the ceilings, like some of these ceilings that we're seeing in football, like even for somebody like DK, this sounds absurd, but they can be even more commonplace in NBA than they can in the NFL.
Well, I mean, you look at the players that we're talking about here, just the wide receivers. So we agree that all three of these quarterbacks are excellent. I mean, especially in fantasy, you got Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson. All three of these guys are Pro Bowl caliber players. All three of these guys have, Kyler maybe the least of the group, but potential like long term to be known as one of the best in their organization, if not the best of all time already. So you look at the wide receivers, though. Of these three, it seems like DK Metcalf had the lowest price to start with and had one of the greatest increases. He's the most likable of the three guys. He's the most, again, as we always use like sort of like cultural popularity, he's out there all over the place already, whether it's in commercials or tweeting or just he's getting his face out there. He's the youngest of these group of wide receivers, and he's got some iconic moments this year already. Like, we know what Tyreek Hill is. We know what DeAndre Hopkins is. DK Metcalf still offers sort of that upside of the Odell Beckham catch, that one-handed grab in the end zone. Like, there's that explosive upside to DK. And I think of this group, he's the guy that I would have wanted to hedge my bets on anyways. But as you and I talked about before the show, even me and Matt Kelly in the offseason, we're suppressing DK a little bit, saying, look, Tyler Lockett needs to get out of the way for this opportunity to happen. He needs more target share for this to happen. Well, his target share was, he wasn't getting Devontae Adams targets to start the year by any means. He's not getting them now, but he has done enough throughout the year to now find himself as one of the most valuable card assets. And the investment initially, in my opinion, at $85 was not very much. Right? Like that is not very much, because the more and more we talk and look at NBA, like NBA is like a tough pill to swallow. It's like, oh God, all right, this is going to cost me $450 initially to get this player. Like, speculating on DK Metcalf at $85 to watch him jump to $400 in a matter of months, and you could just cash out. Like, as you pointed out, there are going to be rises to these players. And you can go back and look historically at what the ceiling becomes. And I don't know if it jumps much more than that. He's already being considered one of the top 5 receivers in the league amongst fantasy, amongst NFL. He's got all this hype. So, like, I don't know how much more he goes up this year. So that probably was his ceiling, right? So selling at that, I think that might be a hard thing for people too. You're really good at it, right? You had 20 Mariota cards. Mariota had one relevant game in the last 3 years, and you sold every single card. And that's very smart, where some people are probably stuck in this game and they're like, well, I can't sell DK now. He just went up to 400. I got to hold him. It could go higher. And it's like, I would rather get out of that card now and take my profits and reinvest them elsewhere. I mean, is that your mentality? I mean, because very few of these guys right now feel like long-term holds to me.
Yeah, especially for football, like if you're buying into a skill position player, even if it's somebody like DK, there is a time and a place to buy, and there's a time and a place to sell. Football, people forget about football. Like, unless if you're really into dynasty fantasy football, you're not going to be listening to any football podcasts from March through June. Like even like the common man football fan doesn't really start paying attention to the NFL until training camp starts or preseason starts in August. So there's not going to be a whole bunch of hype behind those cards, especially then. So yeah, honestly, what I would try to do is if I bought into DK in the offseason, I probably would have tried to save that money and buy, maybe something like a base prism or silver prism of a young NBA star that I'm confident who's gonna, maybe play closer to his ceiling. Or if there's a I have a couple of personal collection cards myself. I'm not just an investor or a flipper. I'm a collector too. So I always try to keep my eye out on certain LeBron James cards. Doesn't even have to be his rookie card. As long as it's some nice looking serial number card, I'm gonna pony up the money to do my best to try to afford it. So um, I honestly probably would have I would have either started looking towards cards that I think can have a greater ceiling to grow in either a young NBA star, or I would just be very content with getting a serial numbered LeBron card that I'm going to hold on for at least a couple of
And I
years.
think that's the other thing that might not get talked about enough. When we look at NFL, if we exclude quarterback, and I would say to a point, maybe even tight end, because we've seen it with this group as well, those seem to be the two skill position fantasy groups that play the longest in terms of age. We've seen tight ends play well into their 30s, 36, 37, 38. I mean, we see it with Jimmy Graham. We see Greg Olson. We saw Tony Gonzalez play a long time. Gronk had injuries. He probably would have played a while. Kelsey at 31 is going to be dominant to 35, 36 with Patrick Mahomes. But when you look at running backs, if you don't have one of the best running backs of all time, if it's not Frank Gore, if it's not Emmitt Smith, if it's not LT, like you're going to get 5 years of stellar production out of a great. I mean, look at Le'Veon Bell's career. You're going to get 3 to 4 to 5, maybe 6 great years. Adrian Peterson being an elite all-time player of production, and your window of value is tied in there. So it's almost like if you want to take the money and run on a running back, you probably should, because the longevity there is not great. Even a guy like Melvin Gordon, who started off a little slow, then was great for a couple years. Now we're seeing sort of average play at 27 going on 28, and most people are going to be off Melvin Gordon. But at the wide receiver position, again, a position of longevity. Julio Jones at 31. Some people are questioning if he still has it. When he was healthy this year, he was great. Julio's probably going to play well into his 33, age 34 season, I believe. So DK Metcalf at 23 years old, if we think, hey, this guy has Julio-type trajectory and longevity, and Julio's had some injuries, that's 10 years from now. DK Metcalf could still be playing at a productive level potentially, where if we're looking at running backs, a Dalvin Cook who's 25, how many years does Dalvin Cook really have left when we're talking about short-term versus long-term investing? And also, DK Metcalf had an unrealized floor, right? Tyreek's floor, we knew what Tyreek was. He was a big play receiver in an excellent offense. We didn't know what DK was, and that's where like that value was. So, which is going to be exciting. I can't wait to talk about this with you when these guys like Jamar Chase and Rondale Moore and these other guys come in the league. Essentially, they have unrealized floors. We don't know what they are, and those are the guys we can speculate on, except the problem is that these damn NFL rookie cards are so expensive. We saw it with Justin Jefferson. I mean, his floor was realized and his prism prices were absolutely insane. So it's very interesting to hear this, because it makes me wonder if one of these rookies goes to a team with a good quarterback potentially, then is their upside even greater? Because we've seen guys, you're a big fan of Allen Robinson, right? But Allen Robinson has never had a quarterback. Like, if just 1 year he could end up on a team with a good quarterback, I mean, do you think that he's a guy, and we talked about him as a buy on an episode, but he has a floor right now or ceiling. But if he went to a team with a new quarterback, do you think that that could jump even more?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Especially if you're getting into something like even I mean, I can't even really differentiate too much between his Prism and Topps Chrome because they're both really cheap. As in even in PSA 10 gem mint condition. So honestly, he can honestly probably give you like 3 to 4x in profit just from, if he I'm trying to think of a team that he could go to. Like even Nate, I know you've been trying to push the Juju to
Yeah,
Houston train, but if A-Rob
sure,
goes to
sure.
Houston, that is absurd. Like his Topps Chrome base cards are going for definitely less than $100, probably like maybe $80 in a PSA 10. And if he goes to somewhere like Houston, like that's going to be a $300 card, like potentially like $300 to $400 card. So just from the hype, and if good training camp videos come out, like just from the hype alone, they're going to go up to that amount. So yeah, I mean, those are like, somebody like Allen Robinson is such a low risk, high reward investment. It's not even
This
funny.
is where people that listen to the show that are dynasty players need to banish the dynasty mindset from their brain, because they go, Allen Robinson, well, he's 27 and a half years old. I'd rather have CeeDee Lamb. He's 21 years old. But the reality is, Jesse just said it. All it takes is a good training camp to launch his value. So even at 28 and some change years old, all you need is a low purchase price and the hype to tether with it, and then you get the card off your hands. We don't care what he does at age 28. We just want that spike to get that value. You're buying a guy that is a proven commodity. He might be one of the safest players in the league. There are a few guys in the league that have been more productive with less adept quarterbacks throwing the ball to them. He's had the worst quarterbacks year over year. I mean, we can go down the list, and they are brutal. And somehow Allen Robinson continues to perform. So he's a great example of a guy that's inexpensive. You can get the PSA 10 version of him. I think you bought, I can't remember if it was the Devontae Adams that you bought. You got a refractor.
Yeah. Oh man, I wish I had it on me right now. Yeah, I have a Bowman Chrome gold refractor numbered out of 50. That's also an on-card auto. That's probably that's one of the sickest autos I have. I think I got it. I got it kind of going into the season, and Devontae Adams cards were kind of underpriced in general. So yeah, I had to jump on that. But yeah, I mean, I've kind of jumped on that train with Allen Robinson too, in terms of like those Topps Chrome and Bowman Chrome sets as well.
It just makes sense because we're looking at a guy that's a free agent that may or may not come back to Chicago. We talked about this on the last episode. If Trubisky is going to be re-signed in Chicago, who knows if Allen Robinson wants to stick around. So the reality is that Allen Robinson actually has an unrealized value as well, because to your point, if he goes to Houston with Deshaun Watson, with a more accurate quarterback, with a guy that we would expect him to create rapport with, his floor will rise significantly from where he is. So he's almost an easy money bet. He's going to be a wide receiver one. Wherever he goes, he's getting paid to be the guy. So it's not a question of, are the target's going to be there? Yes, the target's going to be there. He's Allen Robinson. He's going to go somewhere and be the man in that city. So he's a great purchase right now. We would have to look up his prices to see what he's going for, but admittedly, they are palatable prices. They are not where Justin Jefferson is being priced after one season in Minnesota. Even though Justin Jefferson is great, and dynasty owners are salivating at the mouth. They're foaming at the mouth to get their hands on Justin Jefferson. But this is a card show. This is not a dynasty ownership show. So Allen Robinson is a great buy. Now, I'm going to turn the tables a little bit, okay? I'm going to stir this up a bit. We're going to go to a sport we've not talked about yet. Jesse, I had this epiphany one night. I was sleeping. You've got the card game in my brain now. It's rewired. All I want to do is overspend on cards.
That's your new dopamine rush.
Yeah, exactly. A little flash to the brain. And I woke up. It was like 2 a.m. one night, and I woke up from the middle of sleep and just sat up in my bed. Like, have you ever seen the gif of The Undertaker and the coffin opens and he sits up? He's on the side of the ring. Yep. Okay, that's the moment that I had. And I thought to myself, what about hockey? How come we haven't bought any hockey cards yet? And I started looking guys up, and this is about a few days after I did this tweet about this Wayne Gretzky OPC card that was an air quote questionable PSA 10, maybe in our eyes, and it sold for like 1.34 million or something like this in auction. That sounds close, right?
Yeah, it sold over $1 million. I can't remember how much exactly, but it was, because what the crazy thing about that card is there are only 2 PSA 10s in existence of the OPG Gretzky rookie. So there are thousands of PSA 7s or 6s through 9s, but there are only 2 10s. So that card's going to be going for a pretty penny.
Are we going to find out one day that, like, how we had NBA referees that were on the take, they were getting paid to make calls, And is there going to be a grader at PSA that's on the take?
That person just kind of slipped like $100,000
Yeah.
bill to him just to get that 10. Yeah, God, I hope not. But yeah, I mean anything's possible, but hopefully not.
Okay, well, the point is, Gretzky is pretty much unanimously the greatest hockey player of all time. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that really disputes that. Gretzky set every record. He was incredible the entire duration of time that he was in the league. But you and I have talked, and the guy that we think might be the second greatest player of all time is Jaromir Jagr, right? I mean, is he a guy that you believe should be considered the second greatest hockey player of all time?
He's definitely, in my eyes, the best European player that's ever played. And hockey is just, I think it's almost as global of a sport, or maybe as appreciated but not talked about as basketball is globally. Because a bunch of, a lot of European fans, and obviously we have Canada, and we have a lot of eyes on American hockey games and NHL games in general. So yeah, people appreciate Jagr. Jagr is just like, he's just another freak that I don't think we see we're ever gonna maybe see a player like him again, just given that he's still playing professionally in the Czech Republic. But yeah, Jagr is my favorite player of all time. I was shocked at how cheap some of his cards are going for, honestly, and there was even one that you and I picked up together and kind of split the bill on. So yeah, Jagr is. I'm always gonna. I honestly might just add him to my PC, honestly, because his cards are that affordable.
Well,
right
there's
now.
people listening to the show and they're like, I don't get it. Why Jagr? Why now? Well, here's why. Because Jagr, as Jesse pointed out to me, is 48 years old and he's been playing hockey for 30 years. He was a rookie in 1990 and he's still playing in the Czech Republic right now. He's still playing hockey today. He's still playing today, which is a shocking thing to hear. And one of the stipulations in the NHL to become eligible to play or to be a Hall of Famer is you have to be out of the NHL for at least 3 seasons. So he's been out of the NHL for at least 3 seasons now. But the other part of the rule is you have to be completely retired from hockey, but he's still playing. So there's a loophole in here where this Czech league that he's in could waive his 3-year waiting period and suddenly he becomes eligible. So the second greatest hockey player of all time, after we just saw Wayne Gretzky's rookie sell for over $1 million, is not in the Hall of Fame yet. And when this guy goes into the Hall of Fame, I think there's going to be a realization amongst people and they're going to start looking at his cards. Now, for people that aren't super familiar with hockey or weren't fans in the 90s, there were a lot of great guys, and we've talked about it, Messier and Lindros and Yzerman, Fedorov, and all these guys, right? Like the Red Wings. Yes. Yeah. Dude, Roenick, all these names come back. So,
yep.
So many great players, and you just look right now, Mario Lemieux, lots of people know this name, even if they don't know hockey. His OPC card, which, again, the Gretzky card sold for $1.3 million. It's not a PSA 10. They can say it was. It was not a PSA 10. This is a PSA 8, just sold December 31st, which, correct me if I'm wrong, was yesterday. Sold for $1,700. $1,700. I just bought the same card. It looks great. Authentic. Raw card for like $8 for a Jagr. No bullshit. I don't even know how, because you would think raw price alone. And I will say this, be careful, because there are reprints of these cards that were made, I think, in 2000 or 2005. They should say that they were a reprint. They look exactly like that rookie year 1985, 1990 OPC card, but they are a reprint. So they're
Does it say, do you know, I know on some reprints it'll say on the very bottom, like next to the copyright, it'll say the year. Do you know does it say like 2005 or something?
On those cards?
Does it say like the year that they were
reprinted? Yeah, they do.
I need
to find it. I wish I would have had that pulled up. It definitely says exactly the year it was produced. It'll say 2000. It was in 2000 something, I believe. So it was definitely long removed from these cards. But even if you look at some of these other ones, I mean, he's got one selling for 2,000 for PSA 8. So Jesse and I, again, he mentioned it. Jesse, I was trying to lead him one way into this Yager rookie PSA. It was a PSA 10, and I think there's only, I got to go back and look at this. There's not a ton of them, but I was shocked of all the retired, well, Yager's not retired, of all the great NHL players that had cards, Yager has 5 times the amount of PSA 10s of anybody else. For whatever reason, he has way more than guys like Sergei Fedorov or Mark Messier or, any. I don't even know why that is. I guess. I mean, he is globally.
I was gonna say he's probably a lot more collectible, and like hardcore hockey fans think of him much more positively than other players in the 90s. So there's a reason why his maybe PSA 10 or just PSA pop counts in general for his rookie cards are going to be a lot higher. Yeah, they're like overprinting in the early 90s was a problem. It may not have hit hockey quite as hard as it hit a sport like basketball, but with how collectible and how much of a fan favorite Yager is, that it makes sense why his pop counts are going to be a little bit higher.
Well, and you mentioned this, that there were only 2 PSA 10 Gretzkys out there that survived the test of time. And I believe with Yager, I'm almost certain it was like 700 or 1,000. And even still, there are way more consumers than that number of cards. But I'm looking right now, his PSA 10, the same card for Gretzky that went for over $1,400,000, $500. Like, and again, there's a lot more of them. That's the true difference here. There are a lot more of those cards, which is why I'm glad that Jesse said, hey, there's another card out there that we should look at. Are you down to split the cost of it? And this might be something for some of you guys that listen to this show that have friends or that you trust that you guys would invest in things with, because it was a much nicer card than the one that I was initially pointing out. I mean, it is one of the sickest cards, to be honest with you, I think I've ever seen. And to invest in hockey feels hysterical because this was a fantasy football related podcast to start. Then we started to weave in NBA because there was no reason we couldn't talk about it. You had to talk about NBA. And now we're talking about NHL. But the reason is that Yager is probably considered by most the second greatest player of all time. He has not entered the Hall of Fame yet. He has potential eligibility this year. If you want to be ahead of something that could be monumental, you could look at Yager right now because he's not that expensive. And again, you're talking about one of the greatest at his sport of all time, like of all time. So if you've ever wanted to get into hockey, do it. I bought a Yager card. I bought a couple of them, got kind of screwed on it. Bought a Score rookie. They have 2 versions. There's an American version and a Canadian version. And if you guys care to look this up, it's super pathetic that I did all this research. But you can find one of the 2 versions. And the only difference is the variance in the color on the card, the way that Score is written. I believe the red version is American and the blue version is Canadian, I think, or it's vice versa. But I started buying those up because they were like, $6, $8. And I figured, what the hell? I'll just buy them up and we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll relist him after he goes in the Hall of Fame. But this is a guy that when you look at total points amongst his career in the NHL, this guy led the NHL 5 different seasons in total points. So that ties him for essentially 3rd overall behind, Lemieux and Howe and Gretzky and Esposito. So one of the greatest of all time. And I know most of you guys are like, Jesus Christ, I don't know who any of these guys are. Look, just go look at Yager cards, okay? You can thank us later. Jesse, we always talk about celebrities. We talk about stars. You showed me something earlier today that Tim Duncan was looking at some of his own rookie cards, and Duncan is undervalued, I believe you were saying to me one time, and he's a guy to look at. And Mark Wahlberg looks like he's pretty into the card game. You said you follow Mark Wahlberg on Instagram. Is that true?
I do. Yeah, I do. I'm sure we'll plug it at some point, if not in this episode. I do have a card only Instagram account, so I only follow card accounts or like breaker accounts or whatever. And I saw a bunch of people that I was following were kind of sharing a Mark Wahlberg post about how him and 2 or 3 of his sons are in the process of creating their own sports card business, where I have to look into this a little bit more, but I think it's called they're at the Card Boys on Instagram, boys with a Z. Um, and I think they mostly just they look into breaking or hosting breaks online, and they I think they rip a lot of wax themselves. So it's I mean it's something really cool to see somebody like as big in the entertainment industry like Mark Wahlberg, and seeing him do it with his children, and giving them like a base on maybe collecting in the future, or maybe doing other stuff like this themselves, or creating a business out of this in the future. So it's something awesome to see. And he updates it very frequently too. Like you can tell Mark Wahlberg is like when he was a kid growing up in the 80s and maybe early 90s, he was really into sports cards himself. He wouldn't have done this just from the money perspective, because again, somebody like Gary, like if we compare him to somebody like Gary Vee, he already has enough, like this is like play money for him. Like even if these cards 10x or something, it's not really going to affect him financially. So this is just purely for the love of the hobby. So it's something really awesome to see from somebody like Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, the more and more celebrities that get into this and start to spread it amongst just viewership, people on Instagram, people that were following Mark Wahlberg for other things, those are the kind of people where you might find a guy like you or me or whomever that rip packs as kids, and they're like, wow, that looks fun. He's having fun with his kids. I want to get back into it. And those are the kind of things that help influence the card market, keep people gaining interest. And again, I'm sure you get messages all the time. I get messages so often on Twitter, and I'm always open to answering things. You guys can hit me up in the DMs, or again, hit Jesse up. Follow Jesse on Twitter at planet_fatness. We're trying to get this guy to 1,000 followers. So
there may be a giveaway. I don't know. I've been debating this myself. Like, we got to give something away. If I ever hit 1,000 followers, like just give.
Yeah,
a
we'll do
away.
it.
Just
we'll do something fantastic. Yeah. If we get Jesse to 1,000, if you're a follower of Jesse, we will enter you into some sort of raffle where you can win something very nice. Like Jesse and I we'll do it.
Yeah,
it'll be worth it. It won't be some shitty piece of shit. And I just use that twice in the same sentence. So, Jesse, we had a couple patrons message and had some questions that were really pertinent to sort of the subject that we're on right now. One was from Joshua Mitchell. He's an Eagles fan. I know you're an Eagles fan. The quarterback situation is in flux in Philadelphia, maybe. That's not so much what I've heard. But essentially his question is, as an Eagles fan and a Jalen Hurts card holder, I was really rooting for the playoffs, though I'm happy that they are going to have a top 10 pick. I know you're high on Hurts for Dynasty, but what are your thoughts, as well as Jesse's thoughts, on buying, holding, or selling Hurts cards? The card that I have is ungraded at the moment. Figure he's probably a buy/hold, but the hype was getting crazy. Being an avid Philly sports talk radio listener, I'm sure that the sports talk in Philly is bananas. This quarterback controversy has the city in knots, and after this weekend's loss, his value may be back down to earth somewhat. Curious to hear your thoughts. Jesse, as a resident of Pennsylvania, as a fan of this team, and knowing very well what's taking place in this quarterback room, what are your thoughts on what happens here, and more specifically with Jalen Hurts cards, what are you doing?
I personally would probably stay away for right now, just because there is some hype still built into his prices. We're obviously out of the playoffs. We're pretty much locked into a top 10. I don't even know if we're like close to a top 5 pick at this point, but I know Philly sports soccer goes crazy. They like if we're within range of getting somebody like a Justin Fields, which probably won't happen, but they're speculating on that we could take somebody like Fields and deal Hurts. Personally, I think Hurts is the real deal. This is a Jalen Hurts household. This is, whether you want it to be or not, this is a Jalen Hurts podcast. I'm a big Jalen Hurts fan myself. Even when he was in Alabama and Oklahoma, I was a big Hurts fan. So I was a lot of Philly fans were so pissed when we picked him in the second round. I was quietly ecstatic. I tried to, maybe I acted like I was mad, but I was deep down. I was really happy about that pick. But I mean, for Hurts, I still probably would stay away for now. I think with more and more speculation, as long as we don't hear something from the team of like, oh yeah, we're in the market of a quarterback in the draft, that's probably a little scary. But as long as we don't hear something like that directly from the team, I would be, if anything, I'd be looking to buy as soon as the Eagles are eliminated. And then kind of, a little bit after, like through a little bit after the Super Bowl, and kind of just seeing how his prices are, maybe going into like June or so. So we're going to have a pretty decent buying opportunity for Hurts. If he, as long as he's scheduled to start for us in 2021, the hype on his cards are going to be unreal. Like I think the hype on Hurts cards can surpass what Kyler's hype did to him, and how owners of his Prism cards 3 to 4x their money just on hype alone. Like I think if there's more and more speculation, as long as it's not put out from the team, if it's just Philly Sports Talk Radio or ESPN or whatever, if more and more, if there's more controversy on whether or not Hurts is going to be starting, or if the Eagles are in the market for a quarterback in the draft, then the buying opportunity is just going to be that much better. So this kind of just makes me want to double down once the season is over on Jalen Hurts.
And so just to add some context here, the rookie card that he has of Jalen Hurts is a Mosaic serial of 80. And one thing that you've talked about before is this is the first year of Mosaic in NFL, right?
Yeah. So at first year products, especially from if it's a shiny looking product and it's made by Panini, and it's the first year, it's probably going to hold value for years to come.
So if you're holding a serial Jalen Hurts card, I mean, we've kind of, the hype's died maybe a little bit, over where it was initially a couple weeks back, but are you going to hold through the offseason if you have this card, or are you looking to sell now and see what happens? Or knowing what happens to quarterback cards, he got this out of a break, so he got it for a lot less than your typical person. I mean, my assumption would be that if I'm him, I'm holding this card because, right, we know what the ceiling of quarterbacks are. We've seen guys like Kyler Murray. We've seen guys like, Russell Wilson, obviously established Super Bowl winner. Can't necessarily compare it. But you look at Lamar Jackson, maybe. He won an MVP. That's helped him. But that mobility, that passing precision, Philly is clearly going to make a lot of changes here. And we hope this team takes a step forward. And if they do, and Jalen Hurts is the quarterback, he's going to significantly boost what it cost him after he won it out of a break, right?
For sure. A lot of what happened with Wentz is down. I'm not the biggest Wentz guy, but I'm not exactly a Wentz hater. The line was just hurt, so he was, the line's been hurt the whole year. Brandon Brooks, I think he like tore a bicep or Achilles, I can't remember. And then I saw a report like a month ago that Lane Johnson said his ankle collapsed from within itself. Like it's just something, just like such bad injury luck with the offensive line that saw like Hurts kind of come down to kind of like a human level for week 16, and he looked pretty pretty human against the Cowboys just with the offensive line woes. So I think going into this season, the offensive line is going to get healthier. I think we're going to make significant investments in the offensive line, whether it be through the draft or free agency. So I'm still bullish on Hurts in the intermediate to long term. If I were him, I would definitely hold, because the ceiling on his prices, as long as he's going to be starting in 2021, like Kyler's prices are, again, they're going to look like chump change compared to the hype that's going to follow Hurts.
I totally agree. I think that Hurts could go up so much. So especially if you're fortunate enough to get one of these guys out of a break, I would hold. He's for sure a long-term hold, because Philly can't hold both quarterbacks. And the problem is Carson Wentz's contract is pretty ugly. So there's going to have to be some playing taking place there. I think if I remember correctly, it's going to have to go down the way sort of Osweiler did. Somebody's going to have to eat part of it. And then I got to pull up his contract, but it's pretty significant what he's owed over the next 2 or 3 years. So, but the thing about Wentz, I still like Wentz as well. I mean, they played New York earlier in the year. Carson Wentz threw for 360 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, was sacked multiple times, but he was throwing the ball to Deshaun Jackson, Richard Rodgers, Travis Fulgham, John Hightower, Greg Ward, Arcega-Whiteside, Hakeem Butler. That's it. That's the only guys that were on the field. I mean, in addition to a garbage offensive line for most of the time and missing Miles Sanders in different games, the wide receivers are awful. And I hope you didn't buy Travis Fulgham in Dynasty. I hope you listen. Do not buy Travis Fulgham in Dynasty. Sell, 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 sell. I said that so many times. Why? Why? Anyways, kudos to everybody that told you to buy Travis Fulgham. Big ass mistake. Anyways, Carson Wentz, another guy, though, that is no doubt ends up somewhere else because he's still a young quarterback, a proven quarterback. There's a health history here. This is a team that hasn't put a lot around him either. And I gotta believe he's basically said he doesn't want to be a backup, right?
Yeah, he's not the type that where he'll go out to the media and say anything. It'll usually be from within, and somebody will leak it to some reporter or beat writer. So, yeah, he definitely doesn't want to start. I don't blame him because I think he's a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. I'm pretty convinced personally that he's either going to go to Indianapolis to reunite with Frank Reich. And also I've heard reports going into 2020 initially that Bill Belichick is a fan of him. So if Carson Wentz ever becomes available, the Patriots are going to be, yeah, exactly. So I'm convinced Carson Wentz in 2021 is either going to be a Colt or a Patriot.
That brings me to my next point. Then you're talking about, we both believe that Carson Wentz has plenty left in the tank. He's not one of these guys that is playing poorly or underproducing because he's not good. There's plenty to rationalize away about the situation. Philly took Jalen Hurts in the second round. There was a clear indication that there was questions about health. Maybe there was things we don't even know about that were going on internally with Carson Wentz and a belief that this probably wasn't the long-term answer anymore anyways. Because you don't invest in a quarterback in the second round with the intent of never seeing him touch the field. Unless they're Drew Lock, in which case he should have never gone on an NFL field in the first place. But there you go. Anyways, congratulations, John Elway, who continues to talk about how he's got the intangibles. We believe in him. Yeah, right. Wait till free agency closes next year or the season starts. I guarantee you a veteran signs in Denver. That's almost a guarantee. Or maybe it's Matt Stafford. I don't know. But anyways, Carson Wentz is a guy that you can probably get some reasonable card prices on now as like a prospective purchase, where Jalen Hurts is going to surge. Right now, you're going to see Carson Wentz fall a little bit, and he may be a guy that you can get your hands on as well. So we got another question. This came from Bo, and this is another great question because I don't remember if you've talked about this on air or not. But he talked about, he said this is a random question related to the card market, but he said he heard about a company called Rally RD that's a platform for buying and selling shares of collectible assets. And you've mentioned to me before in the past when I've sent you a Michael Jordan rookie card that sold for $185,000. I'm like, holy crap, man, look how much these are selling for. And you've said sometimes, or even bigger, $1 million purchases, you've gone, well, these are investors most likely. So you're more familiar with this stuff than I am. So in particular, this company Rally RD, just to give you what their thing is, they say that they source, verify, and acquire the most noteworthy items from collectors and individuals all over the world. And it's not just sports. It's lots of different things. It's not just memorabilia. It could be artifacts. It could be whatever. They say they turn that item into a company via regulatory qualifications, and then they split it into equity shares. So this is very different than what other people are doing with their money purchasing cards because we're now investing. Then they say they open initial offerings on Rally where investors of all sizes can purchase a share and build their portfolio. And after 90 days, investors have the chance to sell shares in-app or add to their position in periodic trading days. So are you familiar with things like this, Jesse?
Yeah, we were talking about high-end card purchases, like you said, like a week or two ago. And if there was a card that was going for over $1 million, and you brought it up to my attention, I told you, I mean, there's a better chance than not, it's not a millionaire that's buying these cards. It's probably an investment group that has a lot of money within the group themselves and people that that have put their money towards their cause, not their cause, but their like investment portfolio. So um, this is probably the most investment centric type of transaction you'll see in the hobby, because you're never actually acquiring the card yourself. You're acquiring a share of it. So the reason that people do this is because I think I actually just told you about this pre-shows. So it's usually one of two scenarios. One, they honestly don't really care about having the card in hand, but they know it's valuable. So these are usually like the investor or flipper type people in the hobby. So they just want to get a share of it. They're certain that this card is going to go up because it almost always does. Like if you hear a card that sold a couple years ago for $1 million or $2 million, you better believe that card's probably going to be worth at least, like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 10 million today. So that's just how it works with really rare and super valuable cards. So either they don't care about having the card in hand and they're convinced that it's going to go up, so they can get, a $10 share, $100 share, $1,000 share, sell it at some point for whatever the next person is willing to pick up that share for, and make a profit that way without even having the card in hand and worrying about, all kinds of like eBay fees, or if you send the card to an auction house, you don't have to pay like a 25% premium for the auction house to list it. So it's either that, or two, the card is so rare and so valuable that no matter how much you save up, you're probably never going to be able to acquire this card. And the cards, those rare cards, they very infrequently go up for auction. So this is your opportunity to put, however much money you feel comfortable in investing in and getting a share of this card, and technically having a part of your name as a part of that card. So it's something that's become much more popular in 2019 and 2020 for sure. It's a very investment friendly approach. It's honestly probably going to be pretty profitable as long as you own a share of a card that's worth, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even tens of thousands of dollars, or more. It's something that's getting more and more popular. And honestly, these investment funds they're probably themselves contributing to the price jumps of these, $100,000 to multi-million-dollar cards, because they have the capital to be able to acquire them. So it's something that's definitely another interesting part. I looked into this, into putting my money into this myself, but if it's something like, I don't know, I'll just put one card for example, like a 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan PSA 10, which there aren't too many in circulation. If you want to own a share of that for $50 or $100, you can. So there's a very good chance you're not going to lose that $50 or $100. That card is not going to depreciate.
Yeah, it's a completely digital thing. You will never, similar to Star Stock, you will never have the card in your hand, but you will own the whole thing or some portion of it. And this is just a really unique way to invest in something more significant. And again, there's way more stuff on here than just cards. There's, old relics, things like that you can invest in, that people put money in, but you can even pull dividends off of this and just tons of stuff. I mean, this is so far removed from getting on eBay and just buying cards and selling cards. This is certainly more of a long-term asset. So this is a cool thing that he brought up here. So this is Rally RD. I haven't messed with it personally. I'd like to check it out myself because, a lot of these cards continue to go up in prices. There's, fluctuation in price value. So I'm sure there's money to be made on here. If you have some money you want to invest, if you want to own $2 worth of a Michael Jordan rookie, I guess you can.
It's probably going to go up. That $2 is probably going to turn into $10.
Yeah, exactly. You can 5x your money in a decade. So Jesse, I think we hit all the pertinent information this week. Listen, guys, if you have show questions, you can always ask them on Patreon, patreon.com/I'm outraged. hit Jesse up on Twitter. He's a wealth of knowledge at planet_fatness. Follow him so we can release something nice to the people, rally off some sort of slab or box of cards. I don't know. We'll come up with something. And yeah, if you guys have questions, again, hit us up on Twitter, follow us on Patreon, and continue to help us spread the word on the podcast. We enjoy putting these together, and we enjoy seeing the growth of the clicks that we're getting every week. Clearly, this is a popular topic amongst people, and it's only going to become more popular as more celebrities, players get involved with this, which is clearly the trend that is taking place. So we will see you guys next week on Clear the Cash.